Students Who Design is a podcast and video series that bridges students and the design industry. By students, for students. Be sure to check out our website, studentswho.design. This is Students Who Design.
Today we'll be talking to Meghan Maupin, who studies integrated design management at MIT and was a user experience design intern at Patagonia over the summer.
This episode covers what you might get out of grad school, the difference between working in architecture and product design, and so much more. We really hope you enjoy this episode. Students Who Design is sponsored in part by Facebook Design. For more resources and information on designing at Facebook, visit facebook.design and check out open roles at facebook.com/careers.
Hi Meghan. First off, we'd like to introduce what school you currently attend, what program you're in, and where you previously worked.
Okay, so my name's Meghan, and I'm in the Integrated Design and Management program at MIT, which is a dual grad degree between the School of Engineering and Sloan.
Cool. And where have you previously worked?
Let's see. So I've worked at Partners in Health, Shepley Bulfinch, Formlabs, and Patagonia, and also the MIT Design Lab.
And how did you get into design?
Let me think about it. Well, in high school, I was super into art and also really good at math. So I was trying to think, what could I do with art? I knew I wanted to have some sort of artistic career that could also make a difference, but I'm really good at math, so like, what does that mean? So I kind of ended up at like what I thought was a fusion between the two of those, so I ended up in architecture school.
Okay. And so you're architecture school at UVA?
Yeah, I went to UVA undergrad, and I got a minor in sustainability.
And so majoring in architecture, how did you currently don't do architecture because you're currently at school at IDM, and your previous experiences are from UX design to working at Formlabs. So how did you take that very professional and very specific degree to move towards those fields?
Yeah, so even though I'm doing more product design and UX design, as you mentioned, I'm really happy that I got an architecture degree because I got to study a little bit of everything in studying architecture. So they make you study history, you do hand drawing, you do a lot of computer modeling. I did the sustainability minor, so I did a lot of like systems thinking and used technology to figure out how to like orient buildings. And keeping all of those different influences in mind has really made me think very broadly today about what design is, what to consider when you're designing something, how design can impact people and society and the environment. And kind of just throughout my career, I just chose to sort of get smaller in scale because when I was working in architecture, especially when I was working on the hospital in Haiti, I sort of had this revelation that for me personally, I didn't think on working on a large structure was a way to bring healthcare or make an everyday difference in those people's lives. I thought it could happen better on a smaller scale. And in addition to that, I got frustrated in architecture because I wanted to be a designer. I wanted to be talking to the users.
What's the difference between architecture and design then?
Nothing, I'm just talking more like product design. Okay. I consider architecture to be design, but just more of why I've gotten like smaller in scale. But especially when you're an intern architect starting off, so in like the first year of my career, I was just like moving doors in a floor plan. I wasn't actually doing any design, and I had these lofty ambitions when I went to school, and I was like, I want to do something, like I have all these ideas, and I just felt very frustrated every day when I was working these long hours, only to just stare at the computer all day and move stuff with my mouth like 2 feet, you know?
So how did you successfully how and when did you successfully make the pivot from moving doors to all these user experience roles?
Yeah, so I had this like pretty cool job at the architecture firm where I was sort of like a junior architect, and I was also in this role that they called a geek. So I worked with IT a lot, and part of what geeks did was sort of stay up to date on all of the new technology and figure out how to bring that into the firm. So when my firm got a 3D printer, I was like, this is sick. I love making stuff. And it was kind of my job to figure out how we could use 3D printing in our business, like how we could use it as a communication tool, like printing off models and showing them to someone and explaining. And kind of in that process of doing more modeling and doing more stuff with my hands and working on a different scale, I was actually more interested in that, which is how I ended up working for Formlabs and kind of saying bye to architecture for now. Although I will say a lot of the product stuff that I work on, I think about architecture all the time, and it is maybe even between the scale of what we traditionally think of product design, like a phone and a building. So I worked on a really cool project last year here at MIT, which was a backpack that transformed into an emergency shelter for astronauts.
And could you walk us through the process of like how did you make that?
How did I make it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Because like we always talk about, like we're taught and we always talk about the design process in that like find your people problem, do the low fidelity, medium fidelity, high fidelity, and like deliver it, right? But like it's always in this context of a 750 by 1334 pixel screen. But a backpack that transforms into an emergency shelter is like extrapolating that to a whole different degree.
Yeah. So it's a hard problem because there's less like personal interviewing you can do, and especially since the location of where your product's going to be used is the moon or Mars, you can't really go there. So there's a ton of constraints. But basically, the way I approached it is like, one, I found a really great mentor. So I was working with this professor who had a dual appointment between architecture and engineering, and had thought a lot about like space habitats and different mechanisms of folding and having something be small and expanding it. She did a lot with inflatables, and then I kind of assembled this like team of people. I like reached out to people in the Aeroastro school in architecture, and I kind of got everyone's individual expertise and like brought it into my project. So the Aeroastro people about some of the physics stuff that I didn't really know about, and then just made a ton of models, both like in Rhino and Kangaroo, and also physical models, even small, just like, okay, like what happens if you're trying to fold something that's supposed to be this side, like how do you fold it to be this size? And like how many layers does it need to have? And also, read a ton of academic papers and reached out to people at NASA. So I also had a few mentors who like worked at NASA. It was so cool.
And how did you measure if the success or if it worked?
I mean, it kind of ended as an independent study. To me, the measure of success would be, would the people at NASA think it's meaningful research, and is it something that they would take and possibly use in creating their own habitats? And they seemed really excited about it, so I kind of considered that to be a success, and also had a functional prototype. To make a full-scale prototype was like really insane, because the MIT people told me that in order, we had all these ideas about like spraying insulation, that I would have to do all this crazy safety training and wear a hazmat suit to like build it full scale, so I never quite got there.
I think the functional prototype is good enough. So you're currently in the IDM program at MIT. It's called Fully Integrated Design and Management. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that, and what pros and cons, or what was in your mind when you were thinking about going to grad school after being at Formlabs?
Yeah, so I didn't really think I wanted to go to grad school. I didn't really feel like I needed to, because Formlabs and working at a startup in general is so exciting. And it's really hard to leave when you feel like you're learning so much, and as young in your career, you have all these responsibilities. And I learned so much there, but it got to a point I came in, I was employee number 30 something, and then when I left after 3 years, there were 250, that there was less exploration in what I was doing, and I was kind of doing similar things over and over because I was good at it. And I was very inspired when I was there, and I thought maybe as a designer I might want to start my own company. But then how would I get that knowledge of what to do and how to connect the dots between like designing something, getting it made, bringing it to market? Like I didn't even know where to start. So I thought maybe actually instead of design school, I should look at business school. But I knew that very like uptight business school wasn't for me. So I was like, maybe there's a program out there for people like me, and I just happened to stumble upon IDM, and in its first year, because I'm only the second year of students in the program. And what I liked about it was that it kind of combined everything that I wanted to do, design with engineering and management. So you kind of speak all the language about like all of those different disciplines, and has students from all three. So there's 7 designers, 7 engineers, 7 managers working together in these interdisciplinary groups on projects.
So the class is 20 people?
Yeah. Wow. And it's kind of like a startup incubator within MIT. So like you own all of your own IP. They really encourage you to like work on your own ideas and give you a lot of mentorship and resources in that way. And I was like, this is perfect, because it kind of gives me all the other knowledge I needed, and also all of the resources of the MIT community to really try to start a business like right out of MIT. So it's kind of perfect in that way.
And what do you think students could do to continue improving their craft in a university setting? So I think, in an architecture school, that's all you're doing is improving your craft. But with respects to design or any part of design, being at a startup like Formlabs or any other company, that's like your job 40 hours a week. Whereas in university settings like grad school, people can get caught up in the classes or like the projects.
Yeah, I feel that now. I'm having 2 totally different years. Like my first year of school, I was like so obsessed with school. I was like working like 12-hour days, like taking all these classes, and that was great. Like I did some really cool projects like I just mentioned. But one thing that I kind of started to explore was like getting outside of the MIT bubble, getting outside of just the academic community, and also reflecting on why I learned so much working at Formlabs. And I think it's because I had access to all of these different types of people, and also the Boston community in general, or like maybe even the 3D printing or tech community. So I've really this year been trying to make a conscientious effort to get outside of my own school and really talk to people from different disciplines and who might have different perspectives than you. And I think that's really important for all students to do. And also just to like balance their lives in general. I, like I said, was like a workaholic last year, and this year I've been taking like the 80-20 approach. So I'm doing like 80% work, 20% me time, and actually I find that my work is better and I'm focusing way better.
What does me time consist of? Or sorry, when you say 80-20, do you mean like in the day or in the week?
No, just like in general, just like as a philosophy, like, like I normally try not to work on the weekends, and I'm going like climbing or hiking, so I'm actually training for this really big rock climb that I'm going to do when I graduate. It's in Switzerland, it's called the Eiger. But I've also been training for it already for 9 months and now for like another year. But so like every opportunity I get, I'm like climbing. And I'm taking all these different influences, even outside of school, and they like end up showing up in my projects anyways. So I think it's really important, especially as designers, and reaching outside your discipline, going outside your school, even just going outside in nature, and really opening up to all the different influences and ways that you can pull inspiration from all these different places.
So now I'd like to talk more about your professional and career exposure. So to start off, how did you get your first opportunity or internship, and what did you do to stand out during that first phase of recruiting?
So my first internship was with this really cool architecture firm based in Seattle called Olsen Kundig. And it was my dream internship because I think the guy was a rock climber actually who started it, and they have all these cool like gizmos, and like you turn a wheel and the whole like window opens and shifts and transforms into this, and it was like the coolest shit, and I was like feeling so nervous about it. So I think I'm the type of person, like probably a lot of designers, slightly OCD, and I really like to over-prepare. So I did a ton of research, and I just wrote the most like dope cover letter that like referenced their like projects. Cover letters matter, and actually I would say having good writing skills in general is really, really important, both for like seeming professional, being able to explain your work, being able to justify why you do things, and also being able to be like really clear about what your intentions are. So yeah, writing a good cover letter is an art. Also writing a good email is an art.
The writing is an art.
Yeah, in general. It's a great skill for designers to have, and not a lot of them do. So I think like it was my cover letter and the fact that I like really knew exactly why I wanted to work at this firm and why I wanted those people to be my mentors. It made a really clear case for myself. And then I also have this one tip that I'm going to share on here. I hope not too many people listen, but also I hope a lot of people listen, because then everyone will be doing this tip. Okay, so my tip is, if you get an interview, and then you always want to like say a thank you after, right? And then I made a thank you like postcard with a picture of my work on it, and that's what I sent to them with like a note in the back. So it's like a double reminder, like, oh, thanks for this interview. I'm so polite, and also look how sweet my work is.
So like, on the front was your work, and on the back was this letter.
Yeah, it's like a postcard. Like you make like a postcard of your work as your like follow-up thank you, just like as a reminder of like who you are, and you're also saying a thank you.
So I assume you would have to express ship this, because like if it gets there like after you get your yes or no, then it's weird.
I feel like actually like in general, they take a couple weeks to like get back to you after. So as long as you send it like 2-day mail, like it's fine. But yeah, It's better than sending an email, I think, too.
I think
Because
it's
like
right, yeah.
emailed like delete, yeah.
I've heard, I remember this one person told me how he was interviewing for a management position at FedEx, and he sent a thank you letter through like FedEx postage,
That's
and he
cool.
got the job.
Yeah.
But
Personal
yeah, I think
touch.
there's like that hustle element that a lot of people forget.
Yeah.
Because like, you know, of course you need very good work, but like it's kind of very subjective and hard to compare one candidate's work to the other, but their hustle is very easy to see between the two.
And I think that like, so I've hired some interns myself working at Formlabs, and I would say, and from what I've heard from other people, that so work is obviously like get your foot in the door and having a good cover letter, but you're more likely to get hired if you exhibit that hustle and passion and enthusiasm and really like good understanding of the work and why you would want to be doing it. And I think that makes someone a more appealing intern than necessarily like all of the accolades on their resume. It's like their willingness and like enthusiasm for like doing the
So
job.
when you were hiring interns, that was more of a priority compared to like how many places they worked at on their...
Yeah, I think so, but that might also be more unique to like the startup because, I mean, basically like when you're working at a new technology startup, you're designing things that haven't really existed before. So sometimes like, you want basic skills that people have, but you're not going to be designing, like you have to use your own creativity, and that's where the understanding of like the business and the values and what's important to them comes into play, because that will be more important in creating what you're doing in the internships than because you wouldn't have done anything like what you're doing before.
And so touching upon that, how does the design process or design at Formlabs, a startup, work compared to the more established firms that you've also worked at?
Yeah, so Formlabs was a really cool company to work for because even though they make a hardware product, I think design is really integrated into everything people do there and all the different teams, and also they make a tool that designers use. So when I first started, it was interesting because there's kind of like nebulous teams, like there weren't really teams. I mean, it's so small, it's only 30 people. There was no creative team, there wasn't a marketing team, there wasn't really a design team. There was like a handful of designers who did like everything, which is kind of great because if you have designers sort of working on everything, then it makes everything sort of seamless. And then teams started to form, but I really liked that about Formlabs, that there wasn't necessarily just one centralized design team, that there were designers that were on the product team, but it wasn't necessarily hardware. They also make their own software and 3D printing materials, so product include all of those. But there's also designers who are on the web team, and there are also designers who are on the creative team and the marketing team. And I think that really gave a high level and design and branding to everything that Formlabs did, that really made them stand out as far as 3D printing companies go, especially like early on when they were first starting.
And at designing these big architectural firms, was it very much that you were pigeonholed into one thing, or how did you try to take initiative whenever you weren't required to wear multiple hats?
So I was lucky to not work at a super large firm. I would say it's like medium sized, was maybe 150 people, and they had 2 offices. And I had that cool job of like being a geek, so I wasn't super pigeonholed, but it was still very like formulaic, like you report to this person, you report to this person, and this. You help this team, and you will only be doing this specific thing. And then the other side of that was like the exploratory part of like the technology and doing that. But as far as like being a junior architect, it was hard, and it was also hard to feel like I had ownership in a lot of things that were going on, because by the time I was like the lowest at the totem pole. By the time something got down to me, it was like what I was mentioning, like, oh, I was like changing someone's redlined drawings, or I was just making a model, but I was like just making the model based on their file. Like I had no part in the process, and that was kind of frustrating.
So you've done a lot of hardware and physical product design, and then more recently user experience design. And how have you transferred your learnings between those 2 different types of design in your career?
Yeah, so I think that the biggest thread that connects all of them is figuring out how to make both like technology and product accessible through design. So to me, that means it could be on the product design and the physical hardware part, like how do we make sure that when we open it, it doesn't hit this, or it's not awkward to grab this thing and take this out, or is it easy to intuit how you use it? But it's also, you know, on the digital side, how do you support people when they need help? How do you give them the answers that they need? How can you use video and other forms of media to teach them how to use this technology? So it seems like what's similar in all of that is like user first, like they teach you in design school, like really having a strong grasp on understanding the users and being able to do a lot of like interviews and user research and beta testing. And I think that no matter if a product is digital or physical, and to be honest, like a lot of products now have a component of both, that user part is really key and is kind of at like the heart of all good design of practicing empathy and like really understanding like the needs of who's going to be using the product.
So these last questions in this last section is what we ask every single guest, and so this is what's on the minds of the student design communities that we've polled either on Facebook, Twitter, and Medium. So the first question is, having the experience that you do, there's probably some things you feel that the design industry does not quite understand about the student design community, and we're wondering if you could speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, so having very recently come from industry, I think that one of the biggest things I saw was age bias. And I think that some of the best firms and some of the best companies kind of try to prevent that by giving everyone sort of a seat at the table or a voice, no matter if they're an intern or they're someone that's been there for 50 years. Because if you think about it, there's a lot of advantage to kind of the contributions that can come from a student or someone just out of school, fresh ideas, technology, sort of different mindset, coming from a different background, possibly than people who have like been thinking the same way at a company for a really long time. And the pairing of that person who is coming with a fresh perspective, different tools, with someone who has a lot of industry expertise is really powerful. But in order for that to happen, there kind of has to be an avenue in order for like the younger person to participate. And so while I think it's like kind of unfortunate in these larger, more structured companies that there's not as much room for that. I think that like at startups or at companies who have a really good design culture, it doesn't matter how much experience or what age you are. Just because someone's older than you doesn't mean they're right.
And you have a lot to manage from school now, life, climbing, design. How do you try to stay on top of it all?
Yeah, so
you talked about the 80-20 rule.
Yeah, the 80-20 rule, that's been like a more recent thing because I had a great experience working at Patagonia this summer. And they have an amazing culture, you know, like let my people go surfing. And I did probably one of the coolest projects I've ever worked on, like in my whole career there. And I went climbing every morning, and I did not work on the weekends. And I like hung out and went kayaking with the people on my team. And we fostered these like really tight bonds that I think made my work so much better. So now I'm a huge proponent of like 80-20 rule. Just because that like quality of life and that inspiration that came from like being outside really permeated my work in a super positive way. But also at the same time, I am really hyper organized. I use a planner. I like put everything in the calendar. I was just telling you that I have all these like specific email filters for my inbox. So I try to stay as organized and efficient as possible so then I can do the fun stuff.
No, that thing makes complete sense.
Yeah, and I don't take grades too seriously. That's been a really hard thing that I've sort of had to let go of, especially at MIT, is like A's don't matter, especially in grad school. No one gives a shit about your grades. They're never going to ask about your GPA. But kind of putting your best work forward and also like taking care of yourself so that you can be like a good contributing teammate and you can stay positive and be a good listener, and all of that is like way more important, and that comes from life balance.
And so there's a lot of articles, blogs, newsletters, and general noise on the internet. And how do you filter out what's good content or relevant to you compared to what is just noise or clickbait?
Yeah, so to be honest, don't read that many things. I do listen to a lot of podcasts. So like my favorite is How I Built This, because I just find it so inspiring. Yeah. So I listen to it when I'm on the bus coming to school, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna build something cool today. Like I'm gonna do this. Like they like had the hardest time and they got through it, and now they're like started this company. So I do that, and then what I do instead of like reading a lot of design blogs is that I try to draw inspiration from like the community that I have here. So, you know, from the students that are here, or all of the amazing lectures that happen in other departments. So like, you know, when they found other planets in our solar system, or when the scientists here won the Nobel Prize, and just all this amazing stuff that happens. And I try to go to those lectures and sort of get out of the design bubble as much as possible to sort of like, you know, draw those connections, or sort of have a larger picture of like, what does design mean and what is its role in this world? Because like, to me, design is not just like my shirt or your phone or, you know, this room, but it's a lot larger, and it affects our interactions. And there are a lot of ways that design shows up unexpectedly in science and everywhere else that affects our human experience, that I find really interesting and inspiring, more so than just like flipping through magazines or reading blogs. Also, I want to get off the computer as much as possible.
I think that's important.
Yeah.
That's so important. Or the way like, I'm reading this book called Deep Work right now, and it's all about like turning off your phone.
Yeah.
A lot of it is turning off your phone, or just reducing distraction and embracing being bored. Because like your unconscious mind can.
Yeah, or being just like silent.
Exactly.
Or like open to, yeah, agree, 100%. What's
that
book called?
It's called Deep Work.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you have any mentors that you follow to stay inspired, or any books or even people to act as pseudo mentors for you?
Yeah, so some of my biggest inspiration and mentors are no longer alive. So Charles and Ray Eames are obviously, I mean, as if you're thinking about architecture and product design, like the ultimate. Another person that I'm obsessed with is Shigeru Ban. He's an architect, and he won the Pritzker, which is like the big award in architecture. I think maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, and I saw him speak here at MIT. And what I found amazing about his work, and I've kind of like watched all the videos, or like anytime he's ever talked about his work, is that he takes ordinary materials like cardboard tubes, and he turns it into something like special and sacred, especially in communities that, like, you know, their buildings have been washed away by flooding, or like in developing countries, and kind of uses the participation of the community and this like ordinary material to turn it into something like really sacred and meaningful for the people. And like, that is the best like type of design that you could ever think of. But I mean, there are a lot of mentors even in my program. That's what I love about IDM, is that there's so many experts and so much inspiration just within our like small community of 20 students, that I've learned from them probably more so than I've learned anything in class. And then at MIT community in general, like so many resources and so many people who are just willing to like take the extra time to like give you advice. So like, I'm in a class at the Martin Trust Center for Entrepreneurship, so like at any hour they're always there, and they'll connect me with someone else who's like the best in their or like help me get my stuff started. So I love that. That's probably the #1 reason why I wanted to go to grad school, is like the community and the kind of like informal mentorship that comes from your peers, more so than any of the curriculum or any of the classes. So.
And as a design leader at MIT and just in general, I'm sure there are a lot of people and students that come to you asking for advice. And so what immediate actionable piece of advice would you give to someone listening now?
Also, I don't think I'm a design leader, but thank you for saying that. Man. Well, I think that some of the biggest takeaways that I can think of would be, don't let other people tell you what to do, and also don't let other people tell you that you suck, or don't listen to them. I had someone tell me I should drop out of architecture school and that I like sucked at design. And then like later that year I won like a design competition, and it's so subjective, and I'm like so happy that I didn't give up just because that person who was like actually my teacher told me to drop out. I was like, you know what, whatever, like, and I just kept going. So like, just like following your own intuition and not listening to anyone else. And then the other thing that I think is really important is just, like I said, like getting out there, getting outside of your own bubble, and not being afraid to like ask people for help or like reach out, because some of the coolest things that have ever happened in my life, including probably getting into MIT, getting a job at Formlabs, moving up to Boston, have been because I've reached out to someone like blindly, just like so full of like enthusiasm and wanting to know about what they're doing that it's led to something like amazing. So the more people you've talked to, and just like not being afraid to like ask for advice or reach out or get outside your own like everyday life, will lead to like really incredible opportunities.
And our last and final question is,
Okay.
what's next?
Yeah, so as I said, my program is very focused on entrepreneurship, so I'm actually starting a company now while I'm at MIT and planning on launching it after I graduate. And I'm training for that epic climb in the Alps.
And when do you graduate?
In May. So it's
In May.
coming up
Cool.
soon.
So
Happened so
we'll all
fast.
keep an eye out for your business.
Oh, yeah, we'll see. Hopefully it launches then. Yeah, cool.
Thank you so much for joining
Yeah,
us.
thank you for having me. This was so fun.
Students Who Design is written and produced by Sahil Koja and Omar Abdul Rahim. Visit our website, studentswho.design, for more information.